The Nexus 6P is Google's current flagship Android phablet, and with a 5.7-inch display and lower price, it doesn't stretch your hand or your wallet quite as far as its predecessor, the Nexus 6. The P in the Nexus 6P's name stands for premium display and design. I love how the Nexus 6P looks. It's the first a Nexus phone has had an all-metal chassis, and it's a truly handsome piece of hardware. The exposed chamfered edges catch the light attractively, and the flattened. More importantly, perhaps, it feels less clumsy in the hand and far less bulky in the pocket than the monstrous Nexus 6. It turns out that shaving 4.2mm off the width, to 8mm from the thickness makes a huge difference to the overall feel. The Nexus 6P challenges the Samsung Galaxy Note 5 and Moto X style with a 5.7-inch display and Quad HD resolution, as it keeps pace with its fellow Android juggernauts. That's because it's backed by similar technology, a 5.7-inch AMOLED display, which contrasts with the IPS LCD found in the Nexus 5X, LG G4 and iPhone 6s. The screen has a 2560 x 1440 resolution with a dense 518 pixels per inch, and, all around, it looks brighter and more colorful than the Nexus 6, which also had a dimmer Quad HD display at the same resolution. Brightness is undoubtedly higher when adaptive brightness is turned off, and color accuracy is a step in the right direction compared to what we saw from its predecessor. The Nexus 6P retains the adaptive display functionality from Motorola's Nexus 6. Whenever the phone is picked up or a notification arrives, it flashes a grayscale notification lock screen. Camera. The Nexus 6P comes loaded with a 12MP sensor, complete with laser autofocus as opposed to the phase detection method preferred by Sony, and larger 155 pixels that let in more light than your average megapixels. That last point is important, because the Nexus 6P doesn't have OIS, optical image stabilization. Google has also added Smart Burst Mode to the camera, a new to Google feature that captures photos at a rate of 30 frames per second. Selfie photos taken through the 8-megapixel front-facing camera look good on the whole. The 6P appears to apply some automatic airbrushing, or at least, skin tones look softer. Unlike other handsets, there aren't any filters or beauty mode controls to smooth textures. This could be good or bad, depending on your view, and all editing happens by default through the built-in Google Photos app. This is where you'll see effects like vignette filters. On the video side, the Nexus 6P will shoot 4K video. If you want this, you'll need to reset the default. A brand new built-in feature, slow motion video, can capture up to 240 frames per second, with editing capabilities. This is something we've seen in other phones, by Samsung for example. Using the camera's software is pretty straightforward. You now swipe left and right to switch between photo to video modes. A button tap flips to the front camera and back again. Controls for flash and auto HDR live on screen, while panorama mode, photosphere, lens blur and settings hide away in a sub-menu. These are good modes to have, but you will find more shooting options in other premium devices, like presets for macro, landscape and sports modes. Software and performance. Google and Huawei's Nexus 6P's refinements apply mostly to the hardware, but are also found in its software, with the Android Marshmallow operating system preloaded onto the phone. It's an even smoother experience from boot up to battery drain with the Android Nougat Beta on board if you're willing to download Android Nougat Beta. Running the Nexus 6P is Qualcomm Snapdragon 810 CPU paired with 3GB RAM. It's a common combo for 2015 flagships, but it excels here. It's not as fast the 2016 flagship CPU, the 820, but it's speedy still. I've experienced none of the overheating problems that previously plagued the 810 chip. The only time the Nexus 6P gets warm to the touch is either when it's fast charging or installing a whole load of apps, and it's an absolute performance beast. Lag is nowhere to be seen, which makes for smooth gaming whether you're wasting a couple of minutes with Monument Valley and getting deep into a round of Asphalt 8. In some ways, it feels just as fast as the iPhone 6s Plus. I'm not talking about in terms of specs or benchmarks, but in real-life day-to-day actual use. It's like Google and Huawei have managed to perfectly optimize the software experience with the chipset. I didn't notice any disparity in performance between it and the Note 5 or OnePlus 2, despite the fact the Nexus 6P features 3GB, not 4GB of RAM. Jumping between apps, even beefy games, doesn't cause any problems and keeps your current state saved for a surprisingly long amount of time. The sound pumped out by the dual front-facing speakers is fantastic, for a phone anyway, though they don't quite reach the quality set by Motorola's Moto X style. They're on par with HTC's boom sound though, dishing out detailed noise even when cranked up. It makes such a difference whether you're watching YouTube, listening to Spotify or just waking up to an alarm in the morning. NFC support is here, important for Android Pay, as is Bluetooth 4.2 and Wi-Fi 802.11a/b/g/n/AC. Call quality on 3's UK network is excellent and the mics do a good job of blocking out ambient noise. Battery life. The Nexus 6P is a big phone with a big battery. At 3,450 mAh, its capacity is bigger than most other phones we've reviewed, save for a few, like the Samsung Galaxy S7 Active and Moto X Play. Google's Fold lasts slightly longer than 1 day with heavy use, so you'll have time to get back to that all-important USB-C charger before it's completely drained. It lasts just long enough. Battery life tests indicate that how quickly the battery drains heavily depends on the display settings you have the phone set to. For example, is adaptive brightness on or off? Turning it on saves battery life, with our 90-minute HD video running the 100% charge down to 84%. That's just shy of the Samsung Galaxy Note 5 that ran down to 86% at full brightness. However, this isn't the true full brightness of the Nexus 6P. Diving into the settings menu and switching adaptive brightness off drains the full battery life down to a less impressive 75%. What helps, if you're not constantly turning on the display, are Google's new software tricks, doze mode and app standby. They essentially put the phone into a semi-sleep mode. Fingerprint sensor. Google's Nexus imprint sensor is introduced in the Nexus 6P and Nexus 5X, and it works a lot like other biometric fingerprint sensors out there, including Apple's Touch ID home button. There are two key differences. Registering a new fingerprint takes no longer than 8 seconds, whereas Apple and Samsung's methods require too many long presses and pauses. More strikingly, the fingerprint sensor is on the back and static. It doesn't double as a button that you can press down. Google's hypes this spot as a natural location for your fingers. My index finger, usually resting along the frame, disagreed at first. I had to learn to bend it around back to unlock the phone, and it was initially awkward, but I eventually got used to it. Verdict. The Nexus 6P is easily my favorite handset of 2015 bar none. It looks great, feels great, performs great and has the best software currently available inside the mobile space. Battery performance is exceptional, the camera is decent and overall performance, I've had this phone for months now, is solid, reliable and consistent. I love this phone. Kudos, Huawei.